Hello there. In this session, we're going to start off with a do now. So pause this video in a second. Make sure you've got yourselves a pen, pencil, and some paper and have a go at these questions. The answers will be on the next slide for you. So pause the video now. And here are your answers. So correct these answers, see how well you did on this little mini test, and pause the video if you need a little bit more time. So in this session, the objectives are that students will be able to describe why adaptations are important, and students will be able to give examples of adaptations. Now, an adaptation is the process of change by which an organism or species becomes better suited for its environment. So it's any kind of feature that will help an organism to survive. Now, often the examples are things like plants and animals, but this can also apply to things like bacteria and other single-celled organisms. But for the most part, we'll be focusing on animals and plants. So what things have they got that help them survive in their environment? So for example, a polar bear has many adaptations to help it to survive in its environment, and we'll take a look at some of those in a moment. And adaptations will depend on where the organism is actually from. Some adaptations work really well in cold environments, but would actually be really harmful in something like a desert condition or a jungle. So they're really important for allowing that organism to compete and survive to then reproduce and have offspring and children of their own. So adaptations are for that reason, to help them survive to have children. Now I'm going to use an example of a polar bear to start with today. Now there are two types of adaptations we're kind of talking about. We've got behavioural adaptations, which are adaptations to the behaviour and the way that that organism will act in order to survive. And then there's the physical ones, physical adaptations that just help it survive in its environment. So for example, the white fur of a polar bear helps it blend in with the snow and the ice, which means that it can hunt, camouflage itself in those conditions. There's a thick layer of fat under its skin to help it stay warm in really cold temperatures, and it's got small round ears to stop heat from escaping from them. If it had really large ears, then lots of heat would escape, but the adaptation of a polar bear is that it's got really small ears. Behavioural adaptations are things like digging dens to protect themselves from the cold winds, and the ability to be a strong swimmer. It's important that polar bears can swim because they are surrounded by water, or there's a lot of water involved with moving from different locations. So those are just some examples of how a polar bear has got some adaptations to help it survive. What I'm going to ask you guys to do in a moment is think of your favourite 3 animals and give me some adaptations that help that animal to survive in their natural environment. For this activity, I suggest you think of something a bit more exotic. Cats and dogs do have adaptations, but sometimes they're a little bit harder to see because we kind of do a lot of the care and look after them. So think of things like you would find out in the wild, like rabbits, foxes, wolves, polar bears, tigers, sharks, all of those kind of things. So some animals where it's a lot easier to see, or a lot easier to see how they'd struggle to survive. If you are struggling to find examples, then just do a little bit of research on the internet. There's no harm in using that to investigate some of your favourite animals. Take a good 5-10 minutes to do this. Write a list for each of your 3 favourite animals and pause the video for a little bit more time. I would now like you to complete an exam question that you'll find alongside this PowerPoint or this video on the Dropbox. So complete the exam question. The answers are included as well, so it shouldn't take too long for you to have a look at that, 5-10 minutes, and then you can quickly mark your answers as well. So some final thoughts from this video is that adaptations help an organism to be competitive and survive in its environment. Not all adaptations are useful in all environments. So if I mentioned earlier, thick coats in a desert would be a bad adaptation. It means that it'd be too hot. And there are questions on Educate for you to complete. Thank you for watching this video.